everyone, welcome to our special interview. Today we are hosting Dr. Khaled Elsayes, Professor of Radiology at MD Anderson Cancer Center, to talk to us about a recent publication that brings new hope in our fight against COVID-19. So welcome Dr. Elsayes and thank you for joining us today.
So thank you very much, Siraj, for hosting me for this interview. Indeed, I'm honored to be here. So I have some disclaimers before I start. So the first disclaimer, I'm a radiologist. I never like to publish anything outside my area of expertise. However, this is an emergency that the whole world is living, and it's heartbreaking to see patients dying from all over the world because of this virus.
Well, Dr. Elsayes, I know that you are a seasoned author and member of the editorial boards of several international journals, so I'm pretty sure that you followed the proper scientific methods here, but I'm more interested in knowing what brought this idea to your mind, while it's not related to your area of expertise, as you mentioned.
So indeed, Siraj, this idea is not my idea. It was brought up by Dr. Osama Al-Kholi. Dr. Osama Al-Kholi is a professor of pediatrics in the University of Zagazig in Egypt. And I actually listened to him speaking about it. I have actually talked to him right away to discuss the concept. I tried to put it together in a logical manner and look into the literature for evidences and to this hypothesis. I got two of my young mentees, young friends together, Dr. Hagar and Dr. Tahir, who have worked with me for a week continuously uninterrupted to find the evidences and put it together in writing. I also got Dr. Salama, who is my classmate. He is the professor of pathology, to provide also the proof of concept. What is this? Another disclaimer is I don't want people to think that this is an innovation or this is something that has been validated or this is something that have been proven and then they start to take in the pertussis vaccine, because this publication represents a scientific hypothesis. It's not based on a clinical trial, and more research and the clinical evidence are needed. There are some epidemiological factors that actually give this hypothesis a strength, and most important of it is the age distribution and incidence of the incidence and the fatality, which are almost zero, less than the age of 19-year-old. And this has been also proven, and there is a consensus about it in many countries, and those are the statistics about the age incidence from CDC. So there are very important underlying immunological factors, and this is a very striking fact. And this was first found in China, and they found at this time that interleukin 6 is significantly elevated in non-survivors versus survivors, which give a clue that interleukin 6 is a biomarker that could predict the bad outcomes of COVID-19. So that is a predictor of fatal outcome, and I'll show you more supportive data at the end. So Bordetella Perussis Vaccine have been tested. So what I have provided regarding the age is something that will ring a bell that needs a proof. So what is the proof? The Bordetella Perussis vaccine have been tested against respiratory syncytial virus and influenza A viruses. And it was found to dampen the cytokine storm in these viruses by decreasing the levels or modulating the levels of some pro-inflammatory cytokines. And in our case of COVID-19, interleukin 6 would be most important because it was found to be a predictor for bad outcomes. These are animal studies, and it has been that's even from 2010 studies. Some of them date back to 2010, and it was found to have a cytokine storm dampening effect by decreasing the level of these interleukin.
But it was not tested on COVID-19 yet, right?
It was not tested. No, it was not tested on COVID-19, but we speculate it's same theory. Okay, it's same pathogenesis that scientists are talking about, which is elevated interleukin 6, leading to cytokine storm that lead to serious illnesses. Okay, and by dampening, by decreasing the interleukin 6 and dampening the cytokine storm, you can decrease the severity of illness. What's the recommended use of the vaccine? So if you notice, I said Bordetella Pertussis vaccine because I think that's what is important in our hypothesis here. If we look at the previous slide, you would see that what have been tested here is the Bordetella Pertussis component, okay, and what's called attenuated detoxified strain of Bordetella Pertussis vaccine. That is also supported by the knowledge of when we give the DPT. Okay, so the pertussis vaccine is not given as an individual vaccine here in the States. It's given as a part of the trivalent vaccine, which is DTP or DTAP, right? So it's given together with diphtheria and tetanus. If you look at the age of given the dose of pertussis vaccine, it's given as at 2, 4, and 6 months, and then there is a booster dose at 15 to 18 months, and then there is another booster dose after 10 years in the teenage. Okay, and the effect of this fades away after that. It fades away after several years. So we speculate that that's why it protects the population younger than 19-year-old, right?
So,
But after that, go ahead, Surak. What do you want to say?
so I have a question here. So you are saying that the pertussis component is responsible for this immunity in your theory, not the whole DBT, right?
Yes, this is supported by the fact that TD is given as a booster dose every 10 years after 19-year-old. Okay, so still population get, or at least that's what's been recommended by CDC, is like TD is given every 10 years in the adult age, like older than 19-year-old. So in this study in New York in Montefiore Center by Dr. Corey, a lot of women were tested positive before delivering, but they were not as severely affected as you would expect. So there was no severe illnesses secondary to COVID-19, and this may be explained by the fact that these women get DPT as a booster dose during pregnancy. And that also may explain the gender difference in patients with COVID-19 regarding incidence, severity, and mortality, because women are reported to be less infected and have less mortality when compared to men population.
Okay, so the idea that pregnant women receive DBT during pregnancy might explain one of the factors affecting the gender difference, right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely, because also it's the effect of the DBT will remain for several years after delivery.
understood.
So we hypothesize that the protective effect of Bordetella pertussis might be the cause of low fatality of COVID-19 patients in population under 19 years through its cytokine storm dampening effect. And then after that, exponential increased incidence of COVID-19 with older ages when the pertussis vaccine begins to fade away, which usually takes an average of 4 to 7 years after the last booster dose of pertussis vaccine. Pertussis vaccine serves as an effective mucosal vaccine delivery system. Again, I'm hoping that this hypothesis could be easily tested, and these tests could be expedited so people can be benefiting from the pertussis vaccine if this theory is proven valid.
That's very interesting, Dr. Elsayes. But I have a question. You submitted this paper, I think, a few months ago, right? Because I believe the reviewing will take several months usually. So when did you submit this?
So we have actually submitted this paper in March.
Okay, and that was based on the published data at that
Yes,
time, right?
absolutely. But after that, during all of this time, I want to actually show other
Oh,
supportive data, and this is one of them.
mhm,
This is a very interesting publication that also they correlated the epidemiology of severe disease cases of COVID-19.
mhm,
And they actually thought that the DTP, they didn't talk about the pertussis in particular like ours, but they thought that the DTP can be protective, that trivalent vaccine can be protective. And there is a very interesting fact that with the Spanish flu in 1918, there was a lot of serious cases in younger age, and they speculated that this because there was no DTP vaccination at this time. There are also two papers that, or several papers that these are two of them. They have talked about interleukin 6 in particular as a biomarker predicting the severe illness of COVID-19.
mhm. So now more scientists are following or going to that direction, like to find a relationship between.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. We're just, I mean, we thought that these papers indicating interleukin 6 as a predictor, as a biomarker, that also is supportive of our theory. If we're able to attenuate the interleukin 6, we'll be able to dampen the inflammatory storm or the cytokine storm and lead to less severe illness by COVID-19.
Great. So what do you think is the next step? Is there any plan to test this theory?
So absolutely, we need to test this. We need to have an experimental evidence for this. People don't need to go, and I don't want this to happen. I don't want people to just take this as okay, the solution has came without proving it scientifically. And but I invite also scientists to work on this very hard and at least tell us if this is proven to be accurate hypothesis or inaccurate hypothesis. And I'm open for both possibilities. The reason for putting this together was just to provide some hope in prevention of the serious outcomes of COVID-19 and save patients' lives.
That's very interesting theory, Dr. Elsayes, and I can see there is a very strong logic over there, and also there are more scientists going that direction right now. So hopefully this will expedite the search for a primary prevention against COVID-19 to save more lives. And I commend your decision of not being discouraged about this idea and turning it into a scientific publication to present it to the scientific community so more people can work on that and either validate or reject it.
So thank you very much, Israk. As I said again, I'm not a fan of publishing something outside my area of interest or expertise, but I think we care here about patients' lives. We care about saving as many patients' lives as we could, and I could anticipate some heat, but my main goal here was to save patients' life. With that, I would like to thank you very much for this interview, and I hope that scientists will follow this hypothesis and come up with a solid and valid evidence for this theory.
Well, I'm sure it will raise too many questions, but I think it's something healthy because this is how science works after all. So you presented the hypothesis, now it's up to the scientific community to develop further studies in that area and validate it. Thank you, Dr. Sais, for joining us today. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Siraj.